Hello, chat or commenters or viewers or anybody who clicked on this. If you clicked on this video, you probably have a similar sentiment as I have right now, just utter loss for words, sadness for what is the state of affairs in America. I don't even need to specifically refer to what we're all thinking about, but I know we're all thinking about the same thing that happened yesterday with Charlie Kirk. A few weeks ago, I was going to make a video about how there is a new political shift happening in America, and it was going to be about me saying, as somebody who has very left-leaning liberal views, that due to the strong arm monopoly that leftists has had on the conversation of morality and ethics surrounding politics for the past 10 to 15 years, this has pigeonholed particularly young, even more specifically young white Americans, into becoming the villain that they have been made out to be by media and larger society as a whole. When you have an entire political faction that is, one of the two major parties, their entire platform is about how we live in a system that is created demonstrably by bad white men, and it's for white men, the patriarchy, systematic racism, and you just hear that nonstop for 10 to 15 years when it isn't even true, really. You're going to pigeonhole your opposition into becoming that, because young men specifically in America have been so disenfranchised at every single level, at every single institution, whether it be education, whether it be crime or the justice system or the general court system when it comes to like divorce and custody of kids. Like, men have been disenfranchised at every single level because none of those institutions benefit them, but at the end of the day they're told that they are the main beneficiaries of a system that actually hates them. And what happened with Charlie Kirk, that is like the utmost epitomized example of what I'm talking about. That the mask is completely fallen from leftists who've monopolized all the conversation of morality, is that they don't really believe anything they're saying. They don't this whataboutism of like, oh well, he didn't care about Gaza, or he was a misogynist, or any of this. Like, the only thing I can say to that is, you don't really care about gun violence, you don't really care about Palestine or Gaza. These are all like tragedies that you use as political currency. You don't care if there's gun violence. You want to be the one who can perpetuate gun violence at the behest of your opposition. You don't really care about the Palestinians or any other war in Africa, like in Sudan or the Congo or South Asia, like in Nepal or in Burma. These are all just political currencies for you to trade when they become politically convenient for you to massage a message and manipulate the entire public into a certain direction. So it's just, I think, one of the ultimate pieces of irony of this entire situation is that they killed a legitimately moderate political commentator that represented the right or the conservatives, and as a result of this action, they're going to now press particularly young white men into more and more radical lines of thinking. They're going to push them towards the Nick Fuentes. They're going to push them towards the Andrew Tate. They're going to start to go that direction because they were moderate, they were normal, they did try to have a conversation, they did try to go through the legal means of having a discussion and voting on policy, and then what was the result of that? They get shot at. They get called, for years they get called misogynist, they get called racist, they called homophobe, they get called Islamophobe, all these different names. None of them were true to begin with, and they tried to take the reasonable route, but it turns out you can't reason with unreasonable people. You can't tolerate the intolerable, and so they're now going to go be like, you know what, I don't care if I'm those people, I don't care if I'm what you call me, it doesn't matter. And I'm Gen Z. Yeah, I'm one of the older Gen Z, but this is the first time a political thing has happened. And I've been, politically active since I was a young kid. I was a youngin' because my dad was like that, and so this is the first time I've seen something that I'm actually at a loss for words, because this wasn't just a murder of a man. This was the execution of America's innocence. There's no more room for naivete about who the enemy is and what the opposition we face as a society is, not just for America, but it's for the entire Western country, for the EU, for UK, the entire British Commonwealth, Australia, whatever. This is a common enemy we face, and it's from within, and it's our own people. These are people who don't, like I said, they don't have an actual principle of caring about Palestinians or the patriarchy, any of this. That is all a cosmetic for them to be able to leverage power over you, right? And this all this talk over the past, specifically since COVID, about the alt-right pipeline, the Nick Fuentes types, the Andrew Tate types. Well, I mean, you can forget about the alt-right pipeline. It's an alt-right freeway now. It's an alt-right autobahn. It is not just a pipeline anymore. Like, you didn't, like, whoever did this and the people that celebrate it, they didn't kill Charlie Kirk. They made millions of them. They made millions of Charlie Kirk, and it's the version of Charlie Kirk they tried to make him out to be, this racist, misogynist, whatever ism they want to attach to him. He was none of those things. I disagreed with like 80% of his policy, but like well, I mean, not immaterium. It is materium now because they killed him over it. I mean, but anyways, what I'm saying is that whatever they called him for 5+ years, I mean, I've known about him since I was in high school, so it's been like 10 years since I've known about Charlie Kirk. But whatever they made him out to be, they've now created an army of people that are going to be those things, that have no problem assuming the mantle of the villainy they've accused Charlie Kirk of and killed him over, which on the basis of things that weren't even true. He was a very moderate right-wing guy. Like, he preached, conservative ideologies from like 20 years ago. This is stuff like like people in the Bush administration were essentially saying, yeah. And it's just so tiring to see that the people who have a monopoly on the political discussion and morality are disingenuous, dishonest sociopaths who have a suicidal level of this perpetual litmus test that's never going to end. And to them, the self-destruction of Western society and America and Europe is the ultimate act of martyrdom and I don't know, in worship of this postmodern world, like, moral purity that will never be achieved. This is a mob you'll never satisfy. And to me, what's scary about the whole event that just happened yesterday, what I mean by this is like execution of just innocents. The overwhelming majority of political violence in the past 5 or so years has been directed at right wing people. Like, there has been, of whatever, whataboutism, you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, of course, okay, there has been cases of right wing violence directed at the left, but obviously the velocity and the magnitude, or the velocity and the direction, have been overwhelmingly pointed to one side. Yeah, I mean, just a year ago, Trump was shot at twice, and I think the scariest thing about that is there is going to be like a political reprisal at some level. I don't know what that's going to be or what that's exactly going to look like, but this is going to radicalize a lot of people. And I think the people who celebrate this, and obviously the person who did it, they're so stupid, so short-sighted. Like, I don't see in what universe does this positively move the liberal, progressive, leftist cause in any positive direction. This is going to show people that they will kill you. They will kill you. Charlie Kirk, all he did was go to college campuses and debate college kids. That's all he did. The malicious nature of this entire discussion has been deep-rooted in the past 15 years of an increasingly leveling up of the emotionally charged rhetoric to the point now where an opposition to like transgender issues, opposition to that is now you're denying basic human rights. And I just think, are you fucking kidding me? Are you joking? If you're a bit more privy to world events at the moment, there is a country in Southwest Africa called Burkina Faso, which is a former French colony that's part of a larger trend in Africa that is overthrowing their former colonial rulers and establishing independent governments. In this case, it's some guy establishing a Pan-African socialist government, anti-colonial, anti-imperialism. They're funded by the Russians and armed by the Russians. Wagner is on the ground there, arming and supporting them. Anyways, internet leftists are going crazy over this. They love this guy. They love this regime. They just outlawed being gay, punishable by death, and these people they look for ways to justify it, and they say, oh well, they're just not as advanced and don't have a sense of morality that we do, and it's fighting for imperialism, so it's actually okay that they outlaw being gay. That's just how they are. So it's like these people just got done calling you a racist, homophobe, transphobe, and then now they literally in the same breath go for full circle supporting a dictatorship like that. So that's why I say it's like it's all, it's like all a cosmetic role play in order to leverage your empathy against you, to weaponize every single sense of There's a saying by communists that capitalists will sell you the rope they'll hang you by, or other way around, something like that. Or or the capitalists will sell you the rope you'll hang them with, something like that. And these people are like that. These internet leftists are like that, but it's with empathy. They know that you have a sense of empathy, and they will weaponize it against you. And they know society as a collective has empathy in the West, and they will weaponize that against everybody. And that's why I think like the entire like idea of like this proletariat liberation and like liberation of minorities, it's all a cosplay just so that they can actually be an undercover fascist in reality. And when things like that church mass shooting that happened, I think in Minnesota or Wisconsin a couple weeks ago, we have to like use the correct gendered language on the shooter. Yeah, like the irony of like protect trans kids, but what about white kids, what Catholic kids? And like I said, like I've like a lot of liberal beliefs. I think, just, for policy wise in America, I believe in a universal healthcare system. We pay for so many other countries around the world. We pay for their healthcare, and to have a universal healthcare system, I think Americans should have that. Tuition free colleges, guaranteed paid maternity, paternity leave, so many things. But unfortunately, the leftist platform has been co-opted by absolute crazy, insane people that we're now so far from ever talking about any of those policies, because this is a matter of like survival. Like there could be a shooting on the street any day now because of this. There in the song America the Beautiful, there is a line there that I've always really liked, and it's crown thy good with brotherhood. I don't think we've been good, so we haven't been crowned with brotherhood. This culture that has been cultivated, particularly among the left, of dehumanizing their opposition through equivocating their beliefs to actual violence in order to justify real world violence against them, that's a culture that they have sowed, and they're going to reap that 100 times, but in their direction. Like I said, like there's going to be some sort of political reprisals, and like I don't want violence. Like violence begets violence, and it's just a never-ending cycle. I don't think people have to die over having opinions, and like that's a hot take now, I guess. Like that's stuff they do in third world shitholes with dictators, that kill people for not being a useful idiot. I've spent a good amount of time in the past year and a half or so in like the Philippines, and I for real felt safer walking through the slums of Manila, like actual slums that you see on TV for like Salvation Army commercials or whatever. I felt safer walking through there than the American metro cities, or expressing my opinion in public in America. Like I went to Berkeley, I went to UC Berkeley, amazing school obviously, in the sciences, but it is a hive of scum and villainy when it comes to the political confrontation or like political discourse, I guess. I remember in 2017, I was a freshman. It was my first semester. Ben Shapiro came to campus, and there was a pretty big police presence, because this is when Ben Shapiro was on his Charlie Kirk run, or when going to college campuses. And now I know why he stopped doing that shit a long time ago. But he came to speak, and I remember walking into the auditorium, and I'm just like going there to listen to him because it's a cool event, and I'm a political person. And I remember just looking across the plaza. It's called Sproul Plaza, and I see all the people in the student union building, and they're holding up swastikas, and they're pointing at me, and they're calling us names and all that. And like, I just want to go listen to this talk. And then, but those are the people who have been able to define morality for the entirety of society. And also that night, when we had that Ben Shapiro event, I remember the event closed down, and me and my friends at the time, we walked around outside, and we got a message from our friend that somebody got stabbed. And it was this girl who, she didn't go to Berkeley, not from Berkeley. None of these people are from Berkeley or the Bay Area. But she walked into a crowd of Antifa, and she was wearing a MAGA hat and some other Ben Shapiro apparel. And somebody from the crowd stuck her in the neck with an ice pick. And she was epileptic, so she had like a seizure. Very fortunately, she survived. But like when I saw that, I knew even then, nearly 10 years ago, that this is going to get worse. I don't know when it's going to stop or when it's going to get better. I'm kind of rambling. This is totally off script. I'll just straight off the dome. But I saw the video of Charlie Kirk, up close, and I've seen, I'm a kid that grew up on the internet. I grew up, unrestricted access to the internet because that was in the 2000s and people didn't understand how the internet works. But, I grew up watching the live leaks and watching war footage, and even, recently seeing 4K footage of the Ukraine war and Palestine, Gaza, in Myanmar, and Congo and Sudan, and, all the cartel stuff. And like, I've seen all that. And like, obviously those are all gruesome, horrible. You should have empathy, to be human is to be empathetic. Yeah. Even if you don't have any relation or relevance or agreement with the underlying political struggle. Yeah. But what I saw with Charlie Kirk, that was probably one of the hardest watches for me. And for a lot of people apparently, because what we what we literally saw, was crazy. And also it's compounded by the fact that his wife saw that. And one day his daughters, they're going to grow up and they're going to see the video of their dad getting executed in front of a crowd of several thousand people. And they're going to see the political discourse of people celebrating that. And just the only logical outcome of that is they're going to grow up with a certain unique hatred that no person in their right mind can blame them for. The left, in their infinite wisdom and hubris, they've created their worst enemy, and in the effort of trying to advocate for issues that quite legitimately don't really affect any of us, like this incessant Palestine shit. Now it's to the point where like they're gonna say, well, he didn't care about Palestine. Yeah, you're right. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. I care what's happening right now, and I see what you're doing right now in my home. And that's what's going to come down to. And like I said, it's going to be a majority of the country that doesn't care about being called a villain anymore. Like, I don't, like, you can call me racist, you can call me misogynist. I don't care anymore. I don't care. And like, that's going to be the most people. I mean, and like, it's going to require leftists and liberals to be the ones that make the change this time, because at best, so many of them have been dismissive at best of this political violence. When Trump was shot, they said, oh, he fell on stage. And they looked for ways to nickel and dime it politically to make it sound better for their side. And I guess in the end, this is just why we need to break away from this two-party politic stuff and return to nuance. Yeah. And I think for America, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I think if you look at this as a mathematical function, like, I think it's going to converge to a point of equilibrium at some point down the line, or else it's just total destruction. So we'll take the positive case, which I think is more likely, that it's going to converge to some point of equilibrium, but that's going to take however many years for us to get there. But I think like the local behavior of our timeline, so like now plus 1, 2, 3 years, it's going to get worse. I think so. And I'm not saying that to just be a doomer. When I left America originally, I told everybody, I think it's going to get worse. Economically, of course, that's just, the economy is like 80% a math function, yeah? But then I said socially, it's also going to get worse. And the writing is on the walls. If you didn't believe that was going to get worse around the time that Trump got shot at, you thought it was going to get better from that point forward, you were naive to think that. You were very naive to think that. Like I said, violence begets violence, and until there is a third party like the federal government that can be the only person who can monopolize violence in the political arena, this is going to keep happening. There's going to be a reprisal of some sort. I'm repeating myself, but it's just, I feel like I can't script a video like this. I just kind of had to talk about it, and last night, like, I was up all night last night just thinking about what happened. There's a video I saw on Twitter. Also, pro tip: never go on Twitter. during like national tragedies. Never go on Twitter. You see the worst of people, the worst of the entire population. And there's a clip of this guy that Kirk gets hit and then he slumps, all the terrible things, and you see him jump in the air like a little like Mario, like fist bump, like he just, I don't know, like he just hit the level up, and then he fist bumps and he's like laughing and celebrating while everybody else is in terror. And I think back to that quote. I think it's from like a Japanese like samurai. I was saying, or it might have been a Japanese general. I forget where I read it, but he said that like you don't need to be evil to kill somebody or celebrate death. You just need to think you're right. And like I guess I guess that's all it takes. Like I've always thought, like, how did people in 1935 Germany and also Japan, how did they in communist China, how did they just how are they so okay with just the elimination of human life, universally? And it makes sense. Like the brain is a very powerful thing, and morality is a very powerful weapon, as it is like a tool to guide society. But guiding a society doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be guided towards righteousness, or or good things. It could be used as a weapon for the wrongly smart enough people. And these people, they've detached themselves from all humanity because they've convinced themselves that they're right. And also the extra layer of irony that's not lost on me is that these people are retarded. They're retards. I mean, like that Mark Twain quote. It's like you can actually argue with someone who's smart. Like take Charlie Kirk, for example. Obviously a smart guy, and you could debate him and have a back and forth and have something productive. Maybe you could change his mind on something. He's a bit of a Ben Shapiro argumentative type, and like I don't know if he actually would ever change his mind on anything, just by the nature of his platform. But you could still have that conversation with him. And I always think that like political debates, especially public ones, they're not meant to change the minds of the two people that are debating. It's meant to change the mind of the spectator. You watch a political debate and you see them kind of duke it out, verbally duke it out, and then maybe you walk away with a new perspective. And I think that's like the real beauty of public debate. Obviously, we're not going to have that anymore, and that's why I said like that was the execution of innocence in America, because there's going to be no more college change my minds. This is why Ben Shapiro stopped doing it. This is why what's his face, Steven Crowder stopped doing that shit. He stopped a few years ago, I'm pretty sure. And so we're never going to see any of that again, because this has been, not to make a pun in such a terrible situation, but it is a turning point for the USA. I've seen other people say that too. Having lived abroad and spending a lot of time in various countries in the past year and a half, like it really has shifted my perspective on my country. And like I consider myself a patriot. Yeah, I think Western American civilization is the best thing to have ever graced the entire history of humanity. And I see how people perceive us as really falling off, mostly due to just the culture war, just tearing itself apart. And if you know me in real life, and or you talk to me in real life about politics, I'm always like the eternal optimist. Like I've always like I look at when like Ukraine invaded or got invaded by Russia, and then when October 7th or 13th happened, and then Israel went into Gaza, I'm always the optimist. I always reference this quote by a German general in World War One, and he said in English, "The sky has always been falling." And what that quote means is that there's always some like existential crisis happening on the planet. That's just the nature of humans, to tend towards crisis. But this is the first time out of everything where I'm like taking a step back and I'm like, Jesus Christ, like what's going on? And like it's crazy for me to think about that, because obviously Charlie Kirk didn't even know I existed, and like, but his death wasn't just a death of one person. That was a proverbial execution of so many American ideals, and also not revival, but a creation of something that might be very dangerous in the coming years, which is, I don't want to say the W word, war, but there's going to be worse events before it gets better, I think. And I don't want any part of it. But yeah, I mean, I'm really terrified for America, and I'm thousands of miles away from it. I have no intention of returning. I think there are so many things that are wrong there, and I pray it gets better. I think it will, but it's gonna take years to get there. But yeah, I felt like I had to just speak off the cuff and talk about this. I want to make more videos. YouTube is always something I want to try and do. It's just that it's something you have to commit to, and like I've been just really busy lately. But I'll keep making videos just for the fuck of it, even if I don't get any fucking views. But I guess this is the time to start. You know what I mean?